There's no getting around the fact that our kids will have to leave our house at some point. Eventually, they're going to grow up, finish school, get married, and they'll be out in the world on their own. We have a relatively small portion of their lives to prepare them for this. How do you ensure that your kids are ready to move on? They're moving on whether we like it or not, but how can we be sure that we've done enough? And at the point in our lives where they have not left our house yet, how can we be sure that they're on track to be ready for the future?
I just think as you think about how your kids living their life, are they able to make choices on their own, and are the choices they make really good choices? Do they talk about God a lot? Do they pray to God regularly? Do you observe that? Do you see them reading the Bible? Are you talking about spiritual things together? If all those things are in place, it's a lot easier to see them leave the house every day. And it's a whole lot easier once you know they're going off to college somewhere and they've already got those habits in place. If you're in a place where that child's not doing those things, it can be really tough to see them go off because you just have so much concern.
I put three things. I put number one, make sure they have matured to where they put God first in everything. Period. That's the baseline, kind of like what Kyle was saying. And I think it's important to allow them to make mistakes in life at a younger age and then use those as teaching points to teach them. Now, don't let them make a mistake that's going to cause long-term problems or allow them to get hurt. But making mistakes is how we learn if we have the right attitude in some instances, And I would say give them responsibility at home early and often, and they have set responsibilities that they have to do, and that helps them to mature and take ownership of things and be responsible.
Obviously, when our kids do get to the point where they leave our house, we're not going to stop seeing or stop talking to our kids. We will always, hopefully, have some kind of relationship with them moving forward. But what does that look like? How do you continue to set a godly example for your kids once they have left your house?
Providing a godly example is just the way you live your life, right? So if you're practicing what you preach throughout your life, that's not going to change as they leave the house, hopefully, right? And so if the goal is that I'm going to always provide a great example for my kids, it's just I'm going to live my life the way God would have me to live my life. As far as the relationship that I have with them, the communication style that I have with them, that does change. An 18-year-old kid, a 20-year-old kid often isn't very eager to hear what mom and dad have to say, or they may not express that they're very eager to hear what mom and dad have to say, even though maybe deep down inside they really kind of crave some input. So you just have to be selective in the things that you say and not overbearing, but at the same time, when you see them going down a road that's obviously dangerous, that you take the initiative to offer correction, even if it's not well received. If you're seeing them go down a road that you kind of question, but it's not necessarily dangerous, maybe you give them a little more latitude and freedom to make some mistakes, as Chris expressed earlier.
One thing we've told our kids, and everybody might not agree with us on this, but this is a way that we show them how important God is and putting God first. When kids go off to college, we all know kids who've gone off to college and have left the Lord, right? Because it's all them. Parents aren't there waking them up on Sunday mornings. It's all on them to choose to do the right thing. And we've told our kids, that we're going to do our best to help you pay for college and get out of college with no debt. But if you choose to leave the Lord, you'll lose our financial support in college. So some people may or may not agree with that, and that's okay. But that's how serious we want it to be in their mind when they think about where God is placed in the hierarchy of everything.
I think that's a great point, Chris. You think about what God instructs us regarding our relationship with erring brethren, and sometimes we allow our emotional connection with our child to overrule what God has said about what a relationship needs to be. But our child is going to reject Christ and turn away from the right ways, the Bible gives us real clear instruction on our relationship with that child changes, and that's an area where it's easy for us to feel like we're excused, from following God's instruction. But that's a great point.
When our kids get to that point where they're about to leave the house, they're at a point in their life where they're making some very big decisions that will impact the rest of their life. Things like their profession, their spouse, what college they'll attend, anything like that. As Christians, we want God and spiritual things to be a factor in these decisions. So how do we help kids while they're making these decisions and help them to balance the decision with their responsibility to God?
Well, as far as professions, we've learned from other couples in the congregation, older couples, older kids, there's all sorts of testing you can do to see what's a good fit for a profession. I think that's a great idea. We're already planning on spending that money to see, what would make, what would be a good job for them and what would be a terrible job. We constantly talk to them about, you have to pick a profession that you can support your family, support your wife, support your children, support that family. There are a lot of great jobs out there that don't make any money. And you're not going to be able to provide for your family like God has said by doing that profession. Also, we have instilled, and Chris has been an excellent example in this, is you need to pick a profession where you're not gone 80 hours a week, 100 hours a week. Your family needs you. You are going to be the leader of that home one day. And so you need to pick a job that is still manageable with your family life and as a life as a Christian, and a job that won't take you away from worshiping the Lord. We're not going to pick a career that, they typically have to miss on Sundays or miss on Wednesday nights.
Yeah, that's also something that my dad, talked to me about frequently growing up, going through school, was preparing for where you're going to be in the future, which is hopefully providing for a family. Assuming that you grow up and get married, you're going to be providing for a family. You need to prepare for that. A lot of these decisions that you're making don't just affect you. They affect your future family, your future spouse, and that has to be considered when you are making these decisions. Will you make enough money? Will you be able to take care of your family? Will you be able to fulfill the role that God has given you to fulfill as a man or a woman if it's a daughter?
It was referenced before that God expects us to train up our children the way they should go. And a lot of times we think about that in the context of just there's one path that everybody goes down, but really everybody has a different set of skills, abilities, talents, things that we're particularly qualified to do. And so as I think about how do I help my kids when they're 18, 20, 25 years old and they're trying to figure out the next step of their life, talking to them about the things that they're really good at, reminding them about, you're especially skilled in this area. Maybe you ought to be thinking about a profession that you're interacting with people all the time, or maybe you need to be thinking about a profession that you're really analyzing things and point out the things they've excelled in. I know when I was that age, I didn't really have that sense of understanding that there's going to be certain types of professions, because I haven't experienced it. There's certain types of professions that are really going to hone in on these abilities I have. It's not that I just go get a job and then the job molds itself to me. It's that I need to figure out a pursuit that's going to be suitable. And that may be in a career, it may be in the education I get in college. It also can be in my work among the brethren and the particular area that I find myself most valuable to a congregation.
Yeah, I think in regards to college, it's critical that a college is picked in a location where there's a good church. It doesn't matter what school you get a degree from if you're going to be there for 4 or 5 years and there's not a sound group of Christians to worship with. It's not worth it. The important part about a career is that obviously we pick something that we can provide for our family. And the other thing is, and this it can even be after we get our college degree and have had a job or two, but don't take a job in an area where you know there's not a congregation. I mean, that's basically selling the Lord out for a few extra dollars. It's not worth it, you know. It's just not worth it. But at the same time, we have to provide for our family. You know, 1 Timothy 5:8 says, "But if anyone does not provide for his own, and especially for those of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever." So God doesn't tell us we have to put in 80 or 100 hours a year and make well into the six figures. But at the same time, he says you need to have a good work ethic, and you need to provide for your own.
And for women, this is a harder topic sometimes to discuss, but you know, there are a lot of women who work outside the home. And you know, it's important as a woman to think, am I going to work outside the home? When am I going to do that? How would it affect my family if I did so? What are the possible disadvantages to doing that? You know, I got my college degree. My parents were very insistent upon me getting my college degree in case, God forbid, something happened to Chris. You know, I'd have to support my family. I didn't really think at the time, the degree I'm getting into, would it be a good degree that I could have a part-time job later, you know? Really isn't. It was, you know, it was more a degree that's better suited really for full-time jobs. So I wish I had considered that at the time. When the boys were small, you know, well, let me back up. Before we had children, we both worked full-time jobs, and the best advice we got was, don't use my salary. Just only live off his, and just save mine. And so we weren't already dependent upon my salary. Then when I got pregnant, with our first son, I quit my job, and I stayed home with both boys until our youngest went off to school. And that's when I re-entered the workforce. But still, you know, I didn't want someone else raising my children. And that after school time was important to me. So I found a part-time job where I could still be with my kids, you know, pick them up from school, get that after school time. I've turned down some pretty nice opportunities. I've turned down raises. I've turned down other things where if I had gone full time at the time, it would have benefited us financially, but it would have hurt our family. So, you know, those considerations as a woman, what can you do? You know, I was fortunate enough to find a career that I'm able to work out of my house. I still work technically part-time, you know, my hours are flexible, so I can still put God first and my family second as needed. And you know what? If that ever changes where that is messed up, then I won't keep my job. And that's a hard thing to say, and I know it's a touchy subject because there's a lot of feelings out there, but we only have a short time with our kids, and it is so vital. And nobody on their deathbed says, I wish I would have worked more. I mean, they think, wish I could have spent my time with my kids more. And, you know, your kids need to know how important they are to you, you know.
Well, we have to remember the role that God set up for women too. He tells us to be workers in the home. There are times where some families don't have a choice, they do have to work. But are we working because we want more, or are we working just to make the ends meet? You know, I mean,
Right.
it's a choice we make, and luckily we haven't had to make that choice. I grew up in a single family with a mom that worked nonstop, and I knew that's not what I wanted for my kids. You know, I mean, I wanted to be the mom. I wanted to be there. I wanted to go to their field trips, all that kind of stuff. But it's the role that God set forth for the moms, to be that caregiver, not somebody across the street, not grandma, not whoever. Now, I'm not saying, you know, some people have to, but we have to remember it all goes back to what God's told us.
Yeah, in regards to the spouse, I mean, we always tell our kids, you know, look for a Christian who's going to help you get to heaven. You know, that's what you want in a spouse.
And related to that also, and we've not experienced this yet, which is why, you know, I respect the advice of people who are older than me on subjects like this, but we've got to help our kids understand that when they enter into a marriage relationship, they choose a spouse, they're establishing a household of their own, and I'm backing off. You know, I'm not going to be overstepping boundaries, and you're going to have to choose somebody that's going to be your partner. Dad and mom are going to step in to try to heal the situation, but then I have to follow through and actually respect those boundaries, and that's going to be a tough thing, I anticipate.
Yeah, leave father and mother. Cling to your spouse.
Well, we've had that parent-child relationship, and as they grow, it changes. And I mean, as they leave for college, it even changes a little bit to where it becomes not so much parent-child, but more of a friendship starts to develop, where they start calling from time to time for advice. You know, I mean, it's not all the time, but they start to find that friendship, and it's, you know, not just mom, but it's friend, it's sister in Christ, it's, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And then as they get married, it even changes a little bit more. It's not so much they come to you because they've done something wrong, but it's still the parent-child, but yet a friendship seems to form as they grow. But
So I want to thank you guys for your thoughts on this topic, as well as your thoughts on all the topics. We've had some really good discussion, and I think really biblically based discussion on parenting on all of these different topics. I want to thank you guys for being the godly examples that you have been to young parents like Elena and I, and many other people as well. I know Elena and I have benefited from it, and I know many other people who watch these videos will benefit from it. And I hope you've benefited as well from being able to share your experiences with each other and with everyone else who may decide to watch. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the conversation and gotten a lot out of it, and we thank you guys for taking this time with us. Thanks. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook for more content like this.